Sauce Gardner says he's the best player in this year's NFL draft. I'll say this: he's the most valuable defensive player in the draft. And Bob Huggins gets a long overdue induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame. It finally gives that era of Bearcats basketball a sense of completion. Plus, recapping a classic national championship game between North Carolina and Kansas, with Kansas winning by 3. It came down to the wire. It's all coming up on Locked On Bearcats.
Our Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. It is Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Alex Frank here with you. Sauce Gardner saying he's the best player in this year's draft. This comes just a few days after Desmond Ridder says he's the best quarterback in this year's draft. Is Sauce Gardner one-upping Desmond Ridder? Maybe he is. Maybe Sauce Gardner just has the confidence that he is the best player in this year's draft, and why isn't he? He did not allow a single touchdown in his career. There is value to that. Sauce Gardner is likely not going to be the first overall pick in this year's draft. It's the first pick in the draft is probably going to be either Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe Evan Neal. But Sauce Gardner, when all is said and done, I believe will be the most valuable defensive player in this year's draft. Sauce Gardner plays corner. And in this day and age in the NFL, if you don't have a great cornerback to slow down a prolific and explosive wide receiver, if you don't have a cornerback to take away one whole side of the field, that is troublesome for a defense. That is troublesome. Especially when you play a team like the Bengals who can beat you deep on both sides of the field with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. There was a question that ATB Network on Twitter posed back in mid to late February, and they asked, and they gave you a list of 18 of the greatest defensive players in recent NFL history, and you had to pick 5 players to build your team around. I chose 3 defensive backs as opposed to more men up front. I loaded my defense on the back end. Because I know the NFL today is a pass-first league. There are so many explosive receivers. There are so many really good quarterbacks. Sauce Gardner has the potential to take away one whole side of the field. That is massive for any defense in the NFL. Imagine if he goes to a team in the AFC West. He won't. He'll be off the board by then. But if he were to play there, even if he goes to the AFC East, let's say the New York Jets pick him up. First off, I think he'd be great in New York. Low-key personality, doesn't say much, and is a dominant player. He will be loved by New York fans if he goes to the Jets. He has the potential to slow down Jalen Waddle of the Dolphins, or Tyreek Hill, or Stephon Diggs on the Bills, Isaiah McKenzie. He takes away one whole side of the field. It's going to make it difficult for Josh Allen and Tua to connect with their playmakers. I understand there's a value in pass rushing, especially in the AFC North, being a Bengals fan. I understand the value of a pass rusher, but I also understand the value of a corner. Because what if you can't rush the quarterback? What if an explosive offense is given the time to operate and they're taking shots down the field? You need a corner to make plays and prevent the big plays from the opposing team from happening. That's why Sauce Gardner might be the most valuable defensive player in this draft. Sure, Aiden Hutchinson is great and had a phenomenal season. Sure, Kayvon Thibodeau, when he's on the field, is very good. Sure, Evan Neal's a stalwart at left tackle. But in terms of value, Sauce Gardner might be the most valuable defensive player in this year's draft. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. You take away one whole side of the field, it's going to make it difficult for quarterbacks to throw. Now, tight ends are still used a lot in the game today. But I'm just saying, if you can't go deep to one side of the field, and if it's your strong side of the field, that's a testament to how great Sauce Gardner is. Coming up, a long overdue Hall of Fame induction for Bob Huggins for both him and the university. I'll explain. But first, I need to tell you about Built Bar because this is the time of year that I have pretty much given up on all of my New Year's resolutions. Not this year, though. I'm sticking to it and eating right thanks to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because I actually enjoy eating them. And have you tried the Puffs? If you haven't, you're missing out on one of Built Bar's best tasting bars. They are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. Fluffy, marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar, they're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. They're a fan favorite with some incredible flavors: yummy, cinnamony, churro, coconut, marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. Those are going to be your new favorite. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they pull it off every time. Go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Once again, thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. We are free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube to Locked On Bearcats. You can like, share a comment on this video on today's date, April 5th, 2022. It helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. Alex Frank here with you on Locked On Bearcats. Bob Huggins getting inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame and is long overdue. He's won over 900 games. There are only a select few head coaches with more wins than Bob Huggins. He's taken 2 programs to the Final Four. He's been in the Final Four twice. He's won numerous other regular season and conference tournament championships. And it finally gives that era of Bearcats men's basketball for his 16 years where they went to the tournament 14 times, went to the Elite Eight 3 times, went to the NCAA tournament 14 straight times, including an improbable Final Four run in 1992. It gives that era finally a completion. Now you feel like it was worthwhile because someone is in the Hall of Fame. The face of that program for 14 years, 16 years, Bob Huggins is now in the Hall of Fame. It's an accomplishment for him, but it's also an accomplishment for the university because we maybe forget about that era of Bearcats men's basketball. We maybe do. We shouldn't, but we do. We have to remember how illustrious and historic that program was and the great players that came through that program. And Kenyon Martin and Danny Fortson, Steve Logan, Lenny Stokes, Martin, and James White, and so many others. DeMar Johnson, so many Terry Nelson, Herb Jones, Nick Van Exel, so many great players that came through the program when Bob Huggins was here. And now that era finally has a sense of completion to it. It's interesting the timing of this because there's not a lot to look forward to with Bearcats men's basketball right now. And this induction, it makes you still remember that this is a proud program with a lot of history. There may be some dark times right now, but you can still look back on a bright history, and that history is being on a local and national level. We know Bob Huggins, he was honored during a UC game back in 2019 when they played UCLA, when they honored every coach that had been to a Final Four. He's now in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. There are so many players from that era in the UC Hall of Fame. And now, a face of Bearcat athletics for so many years is in the Hall of Fame. And this is especially important because when you consider the Bearcats and West Virginia are going to be conference foes in maybe 2 years or a year, Bob Huggins still holds a very significant place historic trademark program for the University of Cincinnati. The Bengals, and I compare this to the Bengals in 2016 through 2020, when there were some dark days, and at times you felt like you were in doomsday. The present sucked. They didn't have a lot of history to look back on, or so you thought. 31 years, which was over half the duration that this franchise has been in existence, of no playoff wins. And it was an organization that did not do a good job of honoring its history. And so you asked yourself, well, what positive is there? And then they get this Ring of Honor, which at the time was the best thing they had ever done. So at least while the present maybe didn't look as promising in the offseason before the team turned out to be what it became, but at least there was something positive that we were going to honor what is a very, very good organization with history. A lot of great players came through that organization. Now, obviously, there's a lot of positives, both past and present with the Bengals. But with the Bearcats, while the present may be bleak, you can now look back on that era with fondness and a sense of completion that the leader of those teams that accomplished so much, you can get on Bob Huggins all you want for March Madness success. The fact that they got to the NCAA tournament 14 straight years, and more often than not, were a top 4 seed in the tournament. That is a significant accomplishment. That is remarkable consistency. The Bearcats won 4 straight Great Midwest Conference Tournament championships. The only 4 years they were in that conference. And then when they were in Conference USA for 10 years, they won the regular season 8 times and the tournament 4 times. Winning in the NCAA tournament takes a lot of luck. So if you want to attribute a lot of those losses to Bob Huggins, fine. But just remember that there's luck involved. Just remember that they went to the tournament 14 straight years. Just remember all the success they had in the regular season and how much fun both teams and how much fun the journey was and how good they were in the regular season. All the highlight reel games from Kenyon Martin and Fortson and Logan and all those guys. And now the leader of that era, who made Bearcats men's basketball into what it is today, is in the Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Bob Huggins. So very happy for him and the University of Cincinnati that the leader of the program that made it into what it is today and got a whole community behind it is now going into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Up next, speaking of basketball, Bob Huggins was announced in the Hall of Fame class for the Basketball Hall of Fame this year as part of Final Four weekend. We're going to recap a classic national championship game. It's a win for the Big 12. That's good if you're a Bearcats fan. We'll get into it. But first, I need to tell you about betonline.net, your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all of the latest sports developments, including this week's Masters Championship odds, podcasts, and reviews for all the different leagues this season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information needs, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Alex Frank here with you on this Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. What a national championship game last night between Kansas and North Carolina. The Jayhawks winning by 3, 72-69, completing the largest comeback in the history of the NCAA Tournament National Championship game. Down 16 points, or rather, was it 16 or 17? I'm already forgetting. Down 16 points in the first half. And they found a way to outscore North Carolina 47-29 in the second half. For the Jayhawks, they were, excuse me as I pause that. The Jayhawks, they had 5 players in double figures, including Remy Martin with 14 off the bench, Jalen Wilson, Daniel McCormick each with 15, Christian Braun at 12 points and 12 rebounds, Ochai Agbaji, 12 points for him. Jayhawks out-rebounded, or actually here's the great stat about this game. Carolina out-rebounded Kansas by 20, 55-35. North Carolina had Armando Bacot with 15 rebounds, Brady Manick with 13 rebounds, R.J. Davis with 12 rebounds, 3 players with double-doubles. But North Carolina was only 23 of 73 from the floor, 5 of 23 from 3. Kansas was 29 of 66 from the floor, 6 of 17 from 3. Kansas also had 11 assists to 9 turnovers. North Carolina had 9 assists to 13 turnovers. A very evenly matched game. But in the end, Kansas made more shots than North Carolina. Kansas was the more intense team, and they made more plays to win the game down the stretch. And I think it's interesting when I think about this Kansas team. I go back to 2 years ago when we were all robbed of the NCAA tournament. It was going to be a great tournament, maybe the best tournament in history. We also were robbed of what was going to be a great champ week. I think this year we saw what that tournament could have been like. We had the Cinderella team in St. Peter's. We had so many great games. And yet, Kansas won. I think Kansas would have won 2 years ago. This year, they got it back. You look at how experienced that team was, or this team is. You look at how clutch they were. You look at how well coached they were. Bill Self. I'm watching the game last night, and they're down 15. And Bill Self is not tearing into his team in the huddle during the timeout. He's just calmly getting them together and saying, guys, there's still a lot of basketball left to be played. Bill Self is now in a rare class where he is a multinational championship winning coach. You win 2 national championships, you should be going to the Hall of Fame someday, which I do believe Bill Self will go if he's not in already, which I should know if he is. One of the greatest coaches of our generation. He kind of was forgotten. Here he was. He won a national championship very early in his tenure at Kansas in 2008. He is in the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2017. Now he's won 2 national championships. He's been to 4 Final Fours. He's won 9 Big 12 tournament titles. He's won 16 Big 12 regular season titles. And he had a good success in the Big 10 when he was at Illinois prior to coming to Kansas. But I think about all those March failures that he had since leading his team to the NCAA tournament championship in 2008. And this year, he finally gets that elusive second ring. He's now in a class with Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Calhoun, Rick Pitino, all these great coaches that have won 2 national championships. Tom Izzo can't say that. And now Bill Self, who has won over 700 games. And the crazy part is he's only 59 years old. I mean, if he keeps winning like this, and now the Coach K retired, maybe he'll catch him someday. And if you're North Carolina, you cannot beat yourself up over this loss. You played your hearts out. Armando Bacot played on a bad ankle and still had a double-double. Caleb Love had a fascinating tournament. Brady Manick transfers from Oklahoma was an integral part to this team's run. They were a number 8 seed, but they played like a number 1 seed throughout this tournament. Look at the way they played in some of the games: Baylor, UCLA, Duke, and this game. Kansas, though, was destined to win this tournament. They were the best team throughout the tournament, and it showed because they're the national champions. But North Carolina has nothing to be ashamed of. Here's a team that went from being on the bubble in the final weeks of the regular season, and they come up 3 points short of winning the national championship. That's significant. With a team, like I said, that doesn't have a really standout player, it's just a really good team that can attack you from so many ways. and led by a first-year head coach who learned from one of the masters himself in Roy Williams. There is merit to that. And he took this team without a star-studded player to the national championship and were minutes away from winning it. A significant accomplishment if you're Hubert Davis. And by the way, the fact that it was North Carolina and Kansas for the national championship, this is what the Final Four is all about. When you have a matchup like this to determine the national championship, two historic teams playing in a classic game. This game will be remembered for a long time. It really will. Biggest comeback in championship history. So many great players, so many gutsy performances. And Kansas just was the better team. They didn't panic down 15. All the years and failures that Kansas has had of trying to win another championship with Bill Self, they finally were able to this year. And this is a program that has a lot of regular season and conference tournament success. But they've run into some speed bumps in the NCAA tournament, losing to lower seeds. This year, they did not let that happen. All right, that's going to do it for me today here on Locked On Bearcats. We'll have more on the NFL draft, spring practice, spring game this weekend. Bearcats baseball's back in action too this weekend. Maybe some news on the men's basketball front. We'll keep an eye on that. Thank you for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Frankie_90 with 2 N's, NNATI. You can follow me on Instagram, AlexFrank9_ with that's AlexFrank9_ and email me at alex3frank@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow Locked On Bearcats on Twitter at Locked On Cats and subscribe to Locked On Bearcats on YouTube. And you can like and share a comment on this video that helps more Bearcats fans like you find this podcast. For Locked On Bearcats, I'm Alex Frank. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.